Hey everyone, Chris here from Meeple Overboard with another top 5 list today. And today I'm going to be going through top 5 games by CGE, Czech Games Edition, who are a fantastic publisher. They're known for working a lot with Vlad Chivadl, Hirvatl, however you want to say it. They're also known for bringing out a lot of different games. Now, one of the things that there's a few co-publications, especially here in the United States. I think some of their earlier games might have been localized with, partnered in stuff with different companies. But what I'm going with is if it's on the CGE website, if I can buy it from their web store and everything, I'm going to count it as theirs. If I've seen it with the CGE logo on it here in the United States, and this is the other thing too, is that some of these publishers will localize other companies' games into their countries. So, we'll see what happens here, but I think that this is going to be a solid list. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my top 5. We'll go through these fairly quickly, and we'll start here with number 5. So number 5 is, let me get this going. Number 5 is Through the Ages. Through the Ages is a game that I've been introduced to since the lockdowns, coronavirus and everything. And this is an excellent app. I remember buying the app at the beginning of everything because it was half off. So, it's a $10 app, which is very pricey for an app. I usually don't spend that much on an app. So it was $5. And I thought, well, sure. Fantastic tutorial series. There is actually a few different video series made specifically for the app, learning the app. I know Paul Grogan from Gaming Rules did one. I think he did a few videos on how to kind of get into it and everything. It has a great tutorial, but it's lengthy. It's like a 40-minute tutorial, but that's because it walks you through it. It helps you learn things, and then it gives you moments that are almost like mini tests where you have to actually learn how to do everything. But it is a civilization game. It is all cards and cubes, and that's really all it is, but you are building a civilization that's very tight. You have to build enough of your food engine, of a stone or resource engine, and you have to build all these other types of buildings that will give you culture or victory points, and you have to balance things very delicately. It's an impressive game. I understand why people say that this is Vlad Chivadl's greatest game. I've played it many times now, both digitally, and then I also picked up a copy of the physical game for fairly cheap. Someone was selling it, and I can now confirm that I will probably just be playing this digitally from now on. But I did teach it to Wendy because I feel like it would be, I don't know, I think the app is good to pick up and learn yourself, but it would be a weird situation to sit down with someone else side by side with a phone and say, hey, this is how you play the game, swipe here, press this, do that, whatever. So we played the physical game together, and the app is going to be so good, and so you can, play the app next to each other on the couch or whatever. So now that we've played the physical game, I will sell it on to somebody else and let them experience the joy of the game, but I'll be playing it digitally. But anyway, my number 5 is Through the Ages. I think a fantastic game, brilliant, punishing in some ways if you fall behind on the military, but I've also tried it where you don't really have like the aggression military cards. You just kind of have some of the effects that come up from the other event cards that you can feed into the deck, and without that, it definitely is lacking something. So this is the hard thing about this game for me, and I think why it comes at number 5 is that there's times when the military can seem too crushing, but if you play the lighter military variant, then it feels too unimportant, perhaps. So, I don't know. I think this is just a game that you have to play more times and get used to, and accept the fact that you're going to be crushed by better players, but you can still mostly have fun just building up your own engine and your own civilization. So, for that reason, it's my number 5. My number 4 is a dice drafting game called Pulsar 2112 or whatever, right? I call it 2112 because that's the name of the Rush album, and that's the 2000s number that comes to my mind easier. 2849 is the name of the game because that is 200 years from the California Gold Rush, I think thematically is what this is supposed to be. And so this is the California Space Rush. You are flying around to different planets, and you're trying to collect the resources and stuff that they produce there. There's a really good dice draft. Very clever, where you order out the dice, right? You roll, depending on the number of players, you roll a certain number of dice, and you lay them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you find the median point. There's a bit of stuff you have to do, right? But you find the median point. You put a little marker there, right? So if you roll, if threes is your median point amongst all of the dice that you rolled, you place a little marker there. Every 3 that you grab, nothing quite happens. But every number higher than 3, and you have to lose out, like you have to move backwards on a turn order track. And then for every number lower than 3, you get to advance on the turn order track. So even there, in just which dice you're going to take, there's something interesting. Higher dice are better, right? They let you take bigger actions. They let you move further. They let you use bigger bonuses that you get in front of you. But overall, this is just a really satisfying game that looks like it's going to be kind of a sprawling mess, but it's actually very tight. And you're trying to build pulsars, I suppose, which are these kind of, I don't know what they are. I'm not spacey, sciencey smart enough, but once you visit stars and places on the map, then you can turn them into pulsars, which are basically just a little thematic way of earning victory points every round. And so do you go for a bunch of like one-time objectives, or do you go for like short-term things? Do you get technologies that make you better at other things? Do you just put out a bunch of pulsars out on the board because they'll just keep giving you a recurring victory point engine? There's a lot of good choices in Pulsar 2849, and there's even better choices in Pulsar 2112, which is hopefully a retheme that will come out one day about, from the band Rush and their concept album of rock and roll being outlawed in the world. I don't think that Vladimir Suchy is going to make that one, but Pulsar 2849, great game. Super good dice drafting. My number 3 is also a Vladimir Suchy game, actually. This one's called Last Will. Last Will is hilarious. For maybe people that grew up watching Brewster's Millions, the concept of the movie is that Brewster inherits $3 million from his uncle, and he has to spend all of this money. He can either keep $3 million, or he can try to spend all of it, blow it, not have any tangible assets, not have anything that's worth value, intangible assets, nothing. He can't have anything left at the end of a 30-day challenge. He has to waste $3 million, and if he does so, then he gets an inheritance of $300 million from this deceased uncle. And so it is the classic problem of how do you lose all of your worth, right? That classic problem that you and I experience, right? How do I bankrupt myself truly and perfectly? And so Last Will is great because it is that. It's a very tongue-in-cheek, funny concept of a game. You are trying to bankrupt yourself, and you don't want to have anything worth value at the end of the game. And you start with properties, and so you say, like, man, I got to make sure to sell this property off, but every time I sell off property, I get I get money for it, which is this problem. Man, I wish I could just find a cheap way to ditch all of my assets. And so I have to go to the opera, and I have to bring my horse. I have to pay extra to bring my horse into the opera house because I want to, get fined, and I want to be able to do everything as inefficiently as possible so that I lose all of my money by the end of the game. It is a delightful trip. It is a delightful, weird way to look at things. Anything that gives you recurring income is usually great in games, and in this game, it is the opposite of great. It is negative victory points working towards you. You have to factor things like income and things like investments in a completely backwards way. But it's also a very delightful worker placement game. It's tight. I've played this one, I think, mostly at 3 players, and I think that it seems to have a good tightness right about there that I like. So anyway, Last Will, also by Vladimir Suchy, and I think an awesome game. So that's my number 3, games by CGE. Number 2 is Adrenaline. It's the most thematic, perhaps, adventurous thematic game on my list. I think Last Will is actually incredibly thematic. I think that Through the Ages is fairly thematic. Pulsar 2112, whatever, right? That one's fine. Until they make the Rush version of it, then I'll think it's thematic. But Adrenaline looks like a shooter game. It looks like a it looked like a modern game that came out from like Bethesda Studios, where you run around and you smash things and you shoot things and you blast things, and that's what it is. It's you know it's what do you call that? Like arena shooter game, the board game, the Euro game, because it's about managing your cubes. You have three different colored cubes, three of them each, that are your ammo, and you get to draft like super cool different types of weapons, and then you have to fire them off and shoot at each other, pew pew pew, and then you have to manage these cubes. Okay, well, I only have two yellow cubes available right now, one blue and one red. So which one of these weapons that I fired off do I want to reload? Which ones do I think will give me the best chance of being able to get a majority of damage on someone's health track before before they get killed, and then you score out based on majority of damage done to people. It's such a smart little area majority type system, but the areas that you're trying to control are the other player's damage tracks. So it feels so fun. If I were to have a criticism, it's that, I don't know. If I were to have a criticism of this game, it's that sometimes it can go long because people want to overcalculate things, and I tell people like this is a fun, fast-paced shooting game. Like, especially if this is your first time, don't worry about getting everything right. Go around to have fun. Grab the big tank gun that lets you shoot through walls and literally across the entire map, or get sniper rifles that let you shoot very far across the map, or give you bonuses if you can't be too close, but it deals tons of damage, or get a flamethrower so you can set an entire room full of people on fire. Just have fun with it. Adrenaline is excellent, and so it comes in at my number 2. Unfortunately, I've this one doesn't play 2 players out of the box, and I didn't enjoy the expansion 2-player version, but for a 3 to 5 player game, this is one that we actually owned the longest, given that we almost never own games that do not play 2 players. So I think that speaks to exactly how much I really, really like Adrenaline. And so number 1, as I mentioned, this one is considered this one I've seen with different company logos and stuff on it, and that's Zulkin, the Mayan calendar. When it was brought to the United States, I think it had the Rio Grande logo on it, but also the CGE. So it's a CGE game, is how I would consider it ultimately. And so I'm going to do a few more of these lists with other companies. This one won't appear on my Rio Grande games list because it appears here, and I think it's actually a CGE game, to the best of my knowledge. But Zulkin the Mayan Calendar is absolutely one of my favorite games ever. It is a game that I hated the first 2 times that I played it. It's the game with the gears, and the precision that you need to put your workers out on the gears and let them ride out. The longer that you let them ride out, the better actions you take. It's still to this day one of my favorite twists on worker placement. Twists is a play on words, actually. It makes the gears in my head turn in such a delightful way. So if you tried this game once and maybe you didn't enjoy it, I had that experience. And yet for some reason 6 months later I was compelled to come back and say, I think that game is supposed to be fun. Why wasn't it? What can I do? Let me try it again. And sure enough, when Wendy and I came back and played it the next time, something about it clicked. It was so good, and I like how tight it is. Now, I'm gonna name drop here, and I'm gonna claim a little bit of fame for this. Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower, one of the most popular reviewers out in the YouTube internet, did not really like this game, and so at one of the Dice Tower West conventions, or I think it was MeepleCon, it was still called, a few years ago, I emailed him, I just corresponded with him, and I said, hey, I would love to play a game with you. He had mentioned in multiple of his videos and said, I really like everything Daniel Tascini, Simon Luciani, the designers, have done since then. Maybe I need to just revisit Zulkin. And so I said, hey, I will happily reteach you Zulkin and play it with you. And so my little claim to fame is that we played it, and he said, this is better than I remember. There's something about it, I think, that maybe it takes time to really absorb and appreciate. And he says, it's not my favorite of these designers, right? He prefers Lorenzo il Magnifico because he's wrong, but but he does occasionally revisit his reviews on games, revisit his ranking on them. And after this play, he did bump his up from, I think, like a 6 to a 7.5 or something. So if you didn't enjoy Zulkin the first time that you played it, try it again. I really, really recommend it. This is an early-ish, Tashini game, and so if you and Luciani working together, so they've made huge games since then. Tashini, Tekenu just came out, Teotihuacan, Trismegistus. He really likes his T games. So Luciani worked on games like Grand Austria Hotel and Barrage. So this is an intriguing, like, earlier game. This is definitely the first of theirs that I played, and since then I've loved almost every single one of those Italian design house games. And so looking at Zulkin, there's tracks. I'm like, oh yeah, I see that in there. There's a unique twist on worker placement that I've just not seen anywhere else. These designers are smart. I really like what they do. So that's my number one game, published by CGE. And so it did this thing again, right? I was expecting to be able to see the chat pop up, and so I haven't been following it. I was expecting to be able to see it pop up on my phone. So yeah, Paul, hey, you showed up, and I mentioned you earlier. So hopefully, yeah, you say, hey, that's me. So sorry, but okay. I mean, Paul actually even has a live stream going on in like a half an hour, or whatever. So thanks so much for coming by. I appreciate that a ton. But yes, so okay, so he said Rio Grande and Z-Man used to do the distribution for CGE in the U.S. Okay, this makes sense now, right? That's what I was expecting, but they weren't involved in the game at all. Okay, so that's what I thought. This Zulkin is a CGE game, through and through, and that's the funny thing about how convoluted the board gaming world can be sometimes, is that, you know, is that it's Stronghold Games makes a game, right? And then some other publisher brings it over to a different country's market. So is it that company? Is it a Stronghold Games? Well, it turns out it's actually a Fricks Games game, not even Stronghold, right? And so we just associate companies with it, I think, depending on our exposure. But I'm glad that I did get it right. Paul says that he was a developer on Zulkin, really. So I owe you a great deal of thanks, Paul, because you've worked on some amazing, amazing games. Yeah, so Jordan says, in his heart, it's always been a CGE game. Well, it turns out your heart's in the right place, Jordan. You're not a bad person after all. So, all right. So anyway, yeah, those are my top five. Paul says, just over an hour to his stream. So if you're watching this, go ahead and watch his stream over on the Gaming Rules YouTube channel. I mean, I assume that you should be following him anyway, because his channel is fantastic. He has some of the best tutorial videos out there. He has some fantastic reviews, and I just really love when he will play games and you just get to chat with him, and he's delightful, and he actually keeps an eye on his chat, because his seems to work unlike mine. So I'm gonna have to try a different system than trying to have it pop up on my phone. So, oh, my video says top 10. Fantastic. I'm going to make up 10 more CGE games. Great Goblin Rush 2812. I'm going to see. So I'm going to make up 4 more games. Let's see. Czech Games Squad. That's my number 9. And Jordan recommended one. You finally made a monkey out of me. That's my number 8. I'll have to be more careful with the titles of my videos. I'm going to change this to top 5 and not top 10. So anyway, you made a monkey out of me, Paul. So anyway, my name is Chris from Meeple Overboard. Thank you all so much for hanging out, and thanks for watching my stream. And so I will try and Codename's Disney. They have a Codename Simpsons. Funny story about Codename Simpsons is that Codenames is great. Codenames Duet is probably my favorite version by CGE. And Codename Simpsons, from what I understand, this is interesting. Usually, a board game company will license an IP, an intellectual product, right? So, they'll get the license to Marvel, and then they'll make Marvel Codenames or whatever by CGE, right? Codename Simpsons was actually kind of the other way around, where the Codenames system was leased out to another company that made because I guess they already had the Simpsons IP, and so they had to get they paid for the rights to use the Codename system, and a different company made Codename Simpsons. So that one, kind of technically not a CGE game. Very confusing, like I said. Yeah, Duet is the best version of Codenames. I think it's the best one. I've not tried the Harry Potter one. I know very little about Harry Potter. We read the books recently to our daughter, and that's about it. But I wouldn't be able to look at the pictures and be like, I haven't seen the movies, and so I can imagine only being like blonde girl, two. Okay, so none of those licensed ones are made by CGE. See, that's fair. That to me speaks very highly of how well regarded the Codename system is. If they're able to lease out the rights to that gaming system. So Vlada is an amazing designer, very versatile designer, and so yeah, CGE is very fortunate to be able to work with him so closely. I mean, I don't know if he's a full-time employee or not. I'm going to stop talking because the more I say things, the more Paul corrects me and the more trouble I might get into. So anyway, thanks everyone for hanging out for my top 5 games by CGE. I'm going to go change the title so it no longer reads top 10. Y'all are awesome. Have a great day.